everyone. The League of Women Voters of Alameda, Berkeley, Albany, Emeryville, Eden area, Fremont, Newark, Union City, Oakland, and Piedmont would like to welcome you to tonight's voter forum for the candidates for the Alameda County District Attorney's race. I'm Nancy Beninati from the Piedmont League, and I'm very pleased to see such a robust turnout for tonight's event. Our candidates for the Alameda County District Attorney are Pamela Price and Terry Wiley. It's good to see you both here tonight, and I want to thank you for being here. I'm also very excited that we will have Spanish and Cantonese interpreters for this event. Welcome and thank you to Andrea Roca, Hernan Lafitte, Wei Quen Tang, and Harvey Tai, who are working with us to provide this important voter information to a wider audience. I will ask the Spanish interpreter and then the Cantonese interpreter to give participants watching this video instructions in each language so that anyone can access the correct Zoom channel in the language of their choice.
Sí, muy buenas tardes. Para accesar el servicio en español, por favor, háganle clic a un globo del mundo en la parte inferior de su pantalla y ahí elijan el cuarto de español con la bandera de España. Ahí estaré yo esperándoles. Gracias.
係大家好，今晚呢個係論壇咧，係將會係有多種語言係提供係翻譯嘅。咁如果你係需要咧係廣東話嘅係即時傳譯嘅話咧，請你留意呢個係 Zoom 嘅底部嘅呢個選項單裏邊啦，係揾到一個地球圖標咧，撳一撳佢咧就係請你選語言翻譯，然後係揾呢個 Chinese 中文嘅，咁你就可以係得到我同我同事咧係提供呢個係廣東話嘅即時傳譯嘅。咁如果你係用呢個係手機啊、平板電腦咧，有可能你見到嘅係3個逗點，同樣嘅道理，咁咧就請你撳一撳咧係揀呢個 Chinese 揀中文咧就可以㗎啦。係好榮幸能夠幫大家係做翻譯。Thank you.
Thank you both. I'd like to next present a little background information about the Office of District Attorney before we begin. The District Attorney is the county official responsible for prosecution of criminal violations of state law and county ordinances occurring within the county. While the District Attorney's duties are not limited to criminal prosecution, the District Attorney's main duty is investigating and prosecuting criminal offenses on behalf of the people. The District Attorney's other duties include presenting evidence to the grand jury, deciding which cases to prosecute, investigating and prosecuting civil and criminal cases involving fraud and unfair business practices, as well as other matters such as environmental protection. You are here because you want to make smart choices when you vote. The League is here to help you make a smart choice using a few simple rules to ensure that you have the information you will need and you will make a decision through a fair and balanced process. It is important to the League to give the community a voice, which is why we have invited the community to send us questions ahead of time for the candidates. Those questions have been sorted by a team of League leaders to avoid duplicate questions and to select those questions that are most important to the community. We will not be taking questions during this forum. You'll notice that the Q&A and chat features have been turned off to minimize distraction. I will remind the candidates of some of the key ground rules and so that the audience understands them as well. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for an opening statement. To keep the discussion flowing, candidates will be expected to keep answers to 1.5 minutes. These will be timed and the timer clock will be seen by everyone. In order to be fair to the other candidate, if you run over, I will need to ask you to wrap up your remarks. We'll switch up the order so each candidate has a chance to answer first. Ahead of tonight's forum, I flipped a coin and Ms. Price will be going first. At the end of the Q&A section, each candidate will have 1 minute to provide a closing statement. And so with that, I will ask Pamela to please provide her opening statement. You will have 2 minutes.
the timer. I don't see it. Will I be able to see the timer?
I see the timer. I am not sure why you cannot see the timer.
Maybe because I have my view is wrong. I apologize. Let me try to fix it. There it is. Okay, can you restart it? Sorry. Thank you. Okay, my name is Pamela Price, and I'm running for Alameda County District Attorney because I am a drum major for justice. For 30 years, I've worked in this community successfully arguing against racial harassment and holding corporations and government institutions and police agencies accountable, and are creating new laws against sexual harassment and sexual assault in both education and employment. I've been a Northern California super lawyer every year since 2004, but I'm also a survivor of the Ohio juvenile justice and the foster care system. And I literally made it from the streets of Cincinnati to Yale College by the grace of God. I've been in the civil rights movement and an advocate for racial and social justice since I was 13 years old. I decided to run for this seat because for too long, prosecutors have forgotten that their mission is to protect public safety by advancing justice. Prosecutors have been at the heart of mass incarceration. My mission is to bring a new vision of transparency and equity and accountability to the Alameda County District Attorney's Office, and to create a criminal justice system that works for all of us and not just the wealthy and the powerful in this county. I'm the first person to run for this seat since 1966, and we've had an appointed district attorney since 1939. I've been a champion for women and gender rights since 1977. I've been endorsed by Fund Her and Elect Black Women PAC and Black Women Organized for Political Action, and the Honorable Delane Easton and the Honorable Desi Woods Jones, the first woman to run for mayor of Oakland, and the Honorable Jean Quan, the first female mayor of Oakland, Angela Davis and Reverend Wanda Johnson, the mother of Oscar Grant, and a host of civil rights and community leaders throughout this county who know that I will stand for justice for our youth, for our families, and for our community. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Terry, you're next.
Thank you. Thank you for having me also. My name is Terry Wiley, and I'm running for Alameda County District Attorney. You know, we have a district attorney's office that needs new leadership. It has to be leadership that is about safety and justice. My experience as Chief Assistant District Attorney has enabled me to personally understand the strengths, weaknesses, and potential of the office. You know, since the primary election, I've been endorsed by all four of the 5 members of the Board of Supervisors. And today we announced the endorsement of California Attorney General Rob Bonta. I've been endorsed by all of the mayors in Alameda County with the exception of 3. And I think it's because I represent balanced and experienced leadership. You know, I want to build a working partnership with local police departments, the newly elected sheriff, and the Alameda courts and the Board of Supervisors, so we can provide effective law enforcement with fairness and justice. You know, I'm the youngest of 12 kids and an identical twin. My dad died when I was 7. So I came up with no illusions of what I was going to have to do to make something of my life in order to build a life for myself and my family. And so I come with great compassion and sensitivity to this role as district attorney. I want to make sure that our staff understands trauma-informed care and that we have evidence-based practices when we're providing services. And I think that in the end, you know, this is a $100 million government agency that requires someone that has a steady hand to run the organization. We have 435 employees in 3 major divisions. It is a complicated agency to run, and I have the experience, but more importantly, I bring the balance and maturity to run the district attorney's office. Thank you.
Thank you both. I will launch right into the first question for Pamela. If elected DA, what are your top 3 priorities?
Number 1 is to bring transparency and equity and accountability to the office. this office belongs to the people of Alameda County, and it needs to serve the people of Alameda County. And so that's the number one job that I will have as we work to transform the office so that it in fact reflects the values of Alameda County, that we have an office that operates as a transparent office, that operates from integrity and accountability to this community. So that's number one, the job that I have to start on day one. I also want to make sure that my office is providing effective services for those who are suffering from mental health challenges and addiction challenges, because that's an area where we have failed and where the United States Department of Justice has made it clear that we are on the verge of receivership if we don't address that. And the DA has an important role to play with that. Again, gun violence is something that is very significant for me as a resident, a longtime resident of Alameda County and a resident of East Oakland. I understand that we have too many guns and that we have to be very aggressive about how we control gun violence in this community. And so that's one of the priorities. And dealing with young people coalesces with that, because a lot of times if we can intervene with young people, we can reduce the level of gun violence in this community.
Good question, Terry?
Yes, I think that my top three priorities, as the district attorney, you are the number one law enforcement officer, and the safety of the community has to be at the forefront of what you do as a district attorney. And I think that anyone on this call cannot deny that, today there appears to be a feeling of lawlessness out there. And I think that the first priority of my administration would be to address the level of violence, violent crimes, serious crimes, and just the feeling of lawlessness that is taking place in the community. I have a very specific plan how I want to address it. We know that there are about 2,000 individuals in Alameda County that are driving about 70% of the violent crime in the county. And I have a specific program to address those individuals. Secondly, I think you have to do a massive expansion of those that qualify for drug diversion and mental health programs. Thirdly, I think you have to address the victimization of Asians, the anti-Asian violence that's occurring that has dramatically increased since COVID. Also, the preying on our juveniles and on our elderly has to be addressed. And those would be my top priorities from day one in the district attorney's office.
Thank you. And Terry, you will answer the next question first.
Yes.
So tying into what you were just talking about a little bit, district attorneys wield a tremendous amount of power when it comes to charging someone with a crime. Someone's personal freedom is at stake. Are there certain types of crime that you believe are better left to be dealt with outside of the criminal prosecution system? Why or why not?
Yes, I absolutely do. I think that, let me just talk first from the perspective of charging crimes. I think that Alameda County, and particularly the city of Oakland, has an unusually high number of serious and violent felonies that are occurring on a daily basis. And that goes from murder, carjackings, robberies, any number of thefts using force or violence to commit those thefts. So I think that you have to address those. But I think when you look at the non-violent property crimes, then I think that those are the crimes where you can find alternatives to incarceration and diversion programs to try to get individuals on a different trajectory, because we know that those are the majority of crimes that people commit, and many of them are the reason behind many of those crimes are abject poverty, substance abuse, mental health issues. And so those are the crimes that you want to find alternatives to try to help the person, whether it be with a substance abuse problem or a mental health issue, or in that, as I say, some of these crimes are motivated by people just living in abject poverty. And I think that you have to bring a certain amount of compassion and sensitivity as the district attorney and set policies that are going to address those issues. So that's my answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Same question, Pamela.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Sure. District attorneys wield a tremendous amount of power when it comes to charging someone with a crime. Someone's personal freedom is at stake. Are there certain types of crime that you believe are better left to be dealt with outside of the criminal prosecution system? Why or why not?
Yes, I do believe that a number of the kinds of misdemeanors that we've seen charged currently in the DA's office, which charges about 70% of the charges, more than 70% that the DA's office currently charges are misdemeanors. And so we know that there's a great need to shift the focus from low-level crimes that are related to quality of life, to homelessness, to drug addiction or mental illness. Those things need to be going into alternative justice systems, and we need to expand our access to those. And I've also proposed creating a system of neighborhood courts that allows people in the community to hold folks accountable and help us to resolve the things that divide us that often could spiral out of control, and where police are called and then someone ends up going to jail. And so we know that there's a desperate need to increase the pipeline out of the criminal justice system into alternative justice mechanisms, and to focus on serious and violent crime. And that's what I would do, because the backlog that we have and the failed system that where we see now, yes, to the extent crime is spiraling, it's the DA's office has failed to hold people accountable effectively, whether it's violent crime or nonviolent crime.
Thank you. And you will have the next question first.
Sure.
Encampments for those without housing have become common throughout Alameda County. Will you prosecute cases involving crimes related to those who are living on the streets? Why or why not? And as part of your answer, please explain what you would do to address this problem from within the district attorney's office.
Sure. Homelessness is not a crime, and it's a failure of our system, and particularly our county departments and our county's functioning. Our county does not address mental illness effectively. And so we're cycling people between being homeless and going to John George and going to Santa Rita. And as a district attorney, I would no longer be someone that goes along with that and doesn't, in fact, participate in a conversation, if not lead the conversation, about how do we respond to people who are unhoused, whether and what the challenges that they face. Many people who are unhoused do not commit crimes. And so often what we see in these encampments, unfortunately, there's different things that happen. People are vulnerable in an encampment because they're unhoused in the first place. And there are folks out there that need help. And so as the district attorney, my role will be to work with behavioral health services to make sure that we are increasing our services, that we're using the money that I control as part of reentry to make sure that when people are coming from state prison or being released from the county jail, that they're not going back being forced into homelessness, to the extent that I can stem the tide. As a former foster kid, I'm acutely aware that foster kids need support and that they often end up being homeless. So I see the district attorney as an effective partner with other agencies and compelling the county to really come up with an effective response to the problem. Thank you.
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. Encampments for those without housing have become common throughout Alameda County. Will you prosecute cases involving crimes related to those who are living on the streets? Why or why not? And as part of your answer, can you please provide what you would do to address this problem within the district attorney's office?
Yes. Thank you for the question. Well, I think there's a couple of things. We have seen an astronomical growth in the number of homeless encampments, but also the number of individuals that we see are suffering some form of mental illness. And many of those that are in the homeless encampments, many of them are dual diagnosis in that they are suffering mental health issues, and they're also self-medicating with either drugs or alcohol, which brings on another series of problems. And in terms of how we deal with it from a crime perspective, honestly, it just depends on what the crime is. Because some of the crimes that we see occurring in some of the homeless encampments are anything from murder to serious assault, arson, any number of different serious crimes. So it just depends on what kind of threat the individual poses to the rest of society as to how the case is prosecuted. But I do think that there needs to be a number of services, an expansion of services that are provided to the homeless. One is, and I know the county is considering providing medical care or access to medical care to many members that are homeless, so that their whatever their homeless issue is or whatever the mental illness issue is can be treated with medical care. So I think that's a good start.
Thank you. And you answer the next question first as well, Terry. What standards or policies will you put into place regarding the district attorney's position with respect to requesting remand to jail, bail, including the amount of the bail request, and then release?
Yeah, well, that's a great question, because it's something that as district attorneys that we have to deal with all the time. Because see, a lot of times people think when an individual is arrested and then they're brought to court, that district attorneys will say, well, we oppose bail. What actually happens is many of the individuals that you see in custody today in Santa Rita are individuals who have picked up a new case, and then you find that they have several other pending cases, not only in Alameda County but other counties, and they also have holds on those warrants from other counties. So as a general rule, the majority of individuals that are coming into the system are nonviolent property crimes. And many of those individuals are released from custody. And the individuals that pose the biggest threat and those that are arrested for any kind of serious or violent felony, and we're talking about robberies, murders, attempted murders, those are the individuals that pose a threat to the community. And then as a prosecutor, we have to make an assessment as to whether or not what is the level of threat that if this individual is back out in the community, what are the chances that this person is likely to reoffend? And those are the assessments that we make every day.
Thank you. Tabula?
And the question would be, I'm sorry.
The question is, what standards or policies will you put into place regarding the district attorney's position with respect to requesting remand to jail, bail, including the amount of the bail request, and then release?
Part of the problem that we see in Alameda County, which is consistent across the country, is that bail is used in a punitive manner to coerce plea bargains, because our system essentially operates off of plea bargains. Also, what we've seen in Alameda County, which is consistent across the country, is the racial disparities. And if you go to Santa Rita County Jail or the juvenile facility, you will see that anywhere, certainly in Santa Rita, anywhere from 50 to 60% of all the people there are Black. And when you add in the Latino population, it goes up even higher. And so as the first duty of district attorney, I have to stop the racial, and I have to root out the racial inequities that we have seen that have become normalized in this system, both the juvenile system, particularly the juvenile system, where Black and brown children are 86% of all juvenile felony arrests. And they're the ones that are under the authority of the juvenile authorities to an overwhelming degree, because they're less than 13% of the population. Same thing similarly with the adult population. So we've got to begin to get a handle on immediately Why is it that only Black and brown people are being incarcerated in this county? And what can we do to remediate that harm that undermines and destabilize communities of color across the county? That's a critical element of it. We've got to look at bail from the perspective of the California Supreme Court, which says that it's unconstitutional. And so I will be looking to implement bail policies that are constitutional. Whether the amount of your wealth should not determine whether or not you are able to get out of jail. And I apologize, I cannot see the timers. Let me go back. I apologize.
The next question is for you, Pamela. What is your position on those that are arrested for selling sex? And as part of your response, please discuss how you would treat individuals who are trafficked.
Sure. This office, the current DA's office, has a terrible history of prosecuting women who were trafficked, whether they were underage or after they had aged out into the adult system. There's repetitive arrest. My position will be that we should not be prosecuting women. We should be trying to address the problem of sex trafficking. We continue to be one of the largest hubs in the country for sex trafficking. And we continue to criminalize women. And we continue to accept a rape culture that allows Black and brown women to be raped and kidnapped and killed and exploited on the streets of Alameda County, and particularly in Oakland, but it happens around the county. And so as district attorney, I will take an aggressive position to get to the root of those who are enabling traffickers, who are enabling people to be able to take advantage of women. And we will expand the programs that are available to women who want to get out of the life. I understand the challenges that young women face, in particular, having been on the streets at one point myself. I know how important it is that we provide resources, that we provide support, that we do so in a non-judgmental way, and that we hold men accountable who are the ones that are leading the exploitation of women in this county and have been allowed to do so for far too long.
Thank you. Terry, same question?
Yeah, I think it's important to understand that in Alameda County, we've been one of the leading offices in the country in terms of the manner in which we address human trafficking, providing assistance in recognizing, identifying, and assessing the correlation many times between domestic violence, human trafficking, and the commercial sex exploitation and prostitution, and understanding that 1 in 4 women will experience domestic violence at some point in her life. Domestic violence is the single greatest cause of injury to women. Women are 7 times more likely to be victims of a violent assault from a current or former intimate partner. 61% of women that are prostitutes have been raped 1 or more times. I mean, these statistics are just unbelievable. The trauma that many of the women involved in the sex trade are subjected to. And despite all of that, and despite putting greater emphasis on focusing on the pimps and prosecuting the pimps and not prosecuting the women, Oakland still remains a hub of human trafficking, particularly in the San Antonio district of Oakland. And I literally have met with some of the experts in human trafficking and trying to discuss that, look, if I should be blessed to be elected district attorney, how are we going to deal with this issue? We've seen a number of different approaches tried, and it's really going to take a lot of discussion to figure out how to change this. Thank you.
Your time, thank you. You are going first on the next question, Terry.
Sorry for going over on that last question.
If elected as DA, please discuss the specific steps you would take to ensure that your office does not run afoul of the Racial Justice Act.
Well, I have the benefit of being the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion in the District Attorney's Office. And one of the things that I did is I implemented a 4-part implicit bias training that not only do the DAs have to participate, all of our inspectors and all of our administrative staff have to go through a 4-part training on implicit bias. Module 1 talks about the science of implicit bias so that everybody understands we all come to the job with some implicit biases. But the most important one is Module 2, because Module 2 shows the historical perspective of implicit bias. We're focusing on policies like redlining, showing our employees the residential maps of the 1920s and 30s of Oakland, and how East Oakland and West Oakland were the red-lined areas, and the Fruitvale was a red-lined area, and the policies that existed in those areas in terms of lending policies up until 1968. So we want our employees to understand that there's a lot of government action and private action that have contributed to some of the issues we see in these areas of Oakland today. And so that when a case comes across your desk, simply because it's a case out of East Oakland or West Oakland, we want our employees to understand that there is a lot of government action and private actions that have contributed to those areas being the way they are, and not simply because Black people live there or Hispanic people live there. And I think that we're on a very, very good road. Thank you.
Ms. Pamela?
Sure. The Racial Justice Act is one of a series of legislative acts that have been passed in Sacramento to address the abuses that have taken place under the administration of most DAs throughout California, and certainly in Alameda County as well. In Alameda County, Black people are less than 13% of the population, but we are 20 times more likely to be incarcerated than a white person. That only happens through the agency of the district attorney's office. The Center for Juvenile and Criminal Justice found that between 2010 and 2016, a Black child was 65 times more likely to be charged as an adult than a white child. And a Latino child was 27 times more likely to be charged as an adult than a white child. So these kinds of racial injustices have been baked into this system for decades, and it will take a huge shift culturally. The bias that has been played out and has devastated communities of color and families based on their race or their zip code is not implicit. It's been explicit. And so we've got to move beyond putting labels on things and call it what it is, which studies have shown that most of the racial disparities in sentencing, in charging, in parole and probation and conditions have all originated from the racial biases of the district attorneys and the judges.
Thank you. And you will answer the next question first. What aspects of the current practices in the Alameda County District Attorney's Office would you change, and why?
Number one, I would change our relationship with local law enforcement so that we are clear that we are not part of law enforcement agencies, that we are lawyers, that we are bound by the state bar rules and by the codes of ethics, and that we have a duty to seek justice as independent actors, and that we expect officers we're not going to suborn perjury. We're not going to hide evidence, that those days are over, that we're not going to participate in seeking convictions and enhancements just for the sake of our own personal career. So that's number one. Number two, I will implement a standard of ethics that requires us to disclose exculpatory evidence, that requires us to comply with the rules of evidence, which we know. And I will hold my deputies accountable to the rules and the standard of justice that everyone, regardless of race or age or religion or immigration status or gender or economic status, everyone is entitled to compassion, to respect, and that we are going to administer justice in a fair manner, and that we're going to be held accountable to this community. And we're going to follow the policies that the legislators and the voters have voted for. We're not going to charge juveniles as adults. We're not going to charge the death penalty. We're not going to withhold exculpatory evidence, and we're going to act like ethical lawyers.
Thank you. Terry, your question?
Yeah, thank you for the question, because I think that this is really an important question. should I be blessed to be the next district attorney of Alameda County, I would be the first African-American district attorney of Alameda County. And with that, I bring a different perspective. I bring a perspective where I have seen very, very high disparities in our criminal justice system, which is one of the reasons when I took over our juvenile division in 2013, Alameda County was averaging approximately 300 juveniles in custody per week. By the time I left in 2017, Alameda County was averaging less than 60 juveniles in custody per week, and that trend continues to this day. So when Ms. Price says that, 70% or 80% of the juveniles are Black, there's only about 54 of them in custody per week. So it's a very low number. But I think that but I also think that there will be a very strong message to everyone in the system, law enforcement included, that everyone will be held to a very high standard. Alameda County has always been an office that's operated on a very high ethical plane, and I will continue to lead the office and make sure that we operate ethically as lawyers, but also be a very strong voice to end a lot of the disparities that exist in our current system.
Thank you so much. And this will be our final question for the evening before we go to closing statement.
Yes.
What can you do as district attorney? I'm sorry, this is for Terry. What can you do as district attorney that will enhance the lives and safety of residents in Alameda County?
Thank you. Well, I think first of all, as I stated in my opening, I think that you have to address the level of violent crime that is currently occurring in Alameda County. I think that many of us, when we walk out, we're afraid when we're on the freeways, when we're driving through the city. I've talked to people who say that they're afraid to come to Oakland because of the level of crime. I think you have to address the violent crime that is occurring in this city. We're going to create a crime strategies unit, which is going to be made up of 7 of our top attorneys. And their job is going to be to focus on the 2,000 individuals that we know are driving about 70% of the violent and serious crime in Alameda County. And it's not a situation where we're just going to focus on those individuals and try to put them in jail. These individuals are going to be contacted and talked to. We're going to show them that there are educational opportunities and job opportunities for them to take a look at. However, we are going to also let them know that if they don't put their guns down and if they continue to shoot and have shootouts in the community, that we are going to take them out of the community because it is making the city too violent. Too many people feel unsafe. And when we want to address things like disparities and we want to address a lot of the real problems that exist in the city, it's very tough to do when you don't even feel safe walking out of your house. So that's got to be your first priority to deal with as the district attorney of Alameda County.
Thank you. Pamela, same question.
What is the question? I'm sorry.
What can you do as district attorney that will enhance the lives and safety of residents in Alameda County?
Number one, I can address the epidemic of guns, particularly ghost guns coming into Alameda County, as well as the sale of illegal guns in Alameda County. We have got to reduce the number of guns to be able to get a handle on gun violence. As a district attorney, I can also enforce orders that restrict people's access to guns. We've seen too many opportunities where people who should not have guns, whether they have demonstrated violence in a setting of a familial setting or whether they are someone that is known to have mental health issues, we have to restrict. As a district attorney, my job is to make sure that I amplify and enforce strictly gun restriction orders that are in fact issued by the court and follow those permits that should not be loosely allowed. I can engage with young people. That's number two. We know that young people need to be mentored. They need to be directed. They need conflict resolution tools to be able to not engage and get caught up in violent situations. I can engage with, and I will be a voice for women in domestic violence situations and making sure that we are doing what we can to train our law enforcement and hold them accountable for responding appropriately to victims of domestic violence. Those are a few of the things I can do. Thank you.
Thank you. And Terry, you will have 1 minute to do your closing statement.
Thank you. First of all, thanks for having me, ladies and gentlemen. This is a very, very important race because whoever wins this election is going to be the district attorney for the next 4 years in our county. And it is a county where the largest city in the county is hemorrhaging. It's hemorrhaging with violence. It's hemorrhaging with an out of control mental health problem and homeless encampments. You're talking about who is going to be the person to take over this $100 million government agency that is extremely complicated to run. And one of the persons has never prosecuted a case in 40 years of her legal career. I've spent a career in the prosecutor's office, 32 years. I've been part of the budget process and understanding how to put forth a $98 million budget. There are a lot of moving parts that you have to have some experience as a prosecutor to effectively run the district attorney's office. Thank you.
Pamela, 1 minute.
Sure. Thank you for having me. My 40-year career in Alameda County has been a wonderful one. And there are a lot of profound differences between my opponent and I. He is right. It is very important that we elect the right person in this election. This is the first time we've had an open election since 1939. I have been an active member of this community since 1978. And I think proximity matters. I know that it does. And it's important that you know what you talk about when you talk about Oakland. You know why we love it and why I've stayed here all of these years. I have prosecuted successfully, tried cases all over Northern California and as far as Fresno and Amador County. And I have had an opportunity to serve and solve problems for the people of Alameda County. I'm a trusted leader in this community, and I will be a trusted leader of the district attorney's office. Thank you.
Well, thank you both so much for participating in our forum this evening. You've really helped the voters get a better sense of who you are and your position. So thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you.
I also want to point out, there's a sign behind me. It's votersedge.org. It is an online collection of information regarding all of the candidates in the that are running, and we encourage you to view the candidates' resumes, platforms, and positions there. And again, it's votersedge.org. In addition, your local leagues will be hosting numerous additional forums for local candidates who will be on your ballot. Please visit your local league's website using the links that you see on the screen and that will be posted in the chat. You can find information about the upcoming forums, including how to attend and how to submit questions in advance. You can also access recordings of previous forums there. In addition, please remember that you can, if you haven't yet, you can register to vote up until November 1st. Ballots will be mailed out on October 10th, and you can vote in person, by mail, or place your ballot in an official Alameda County ballot drop box. But please remember to cast your ballot on or before Election Day, which is November 8th. And finally, before we break, please respond to this very quick 2-question poll. The League wants your feedback, and we value it. You will also receive a 1-question survey in your browser window after you leave the webinar. If you could, just please take a moment to give us your written feedback. I want to thank you all for attending tonight. And again, thank you to our candidates. And on behalf of all of the leagues of Alameda County,